This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I'll call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda was call to order. I would like to add something to the agenda. If you'll entertain the motion, I'd like to move to add item B under old business, discussion of CIP plan.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Discussion. At the Board of Finance meeting on Thursday, there was lots of discussion surrounding the CIP plan. Certainly this is uncharted territory in all of this time, and we have lots of unanswered questions from the state and from many other sources. So I've taken another look at it, and I'd like to revisit that with this board. Any other discussion?
Well, okay, we're going to discuss it under B. So
yeah, this is just to add it to the
right.
agenda. Okay, all right. Seeing no further discussion, Robin's going to roll call our votes for us tonight, just to make it a little bit easier since we can't always see each other.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
Liza,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Erica.
Aye. Okay, thank you. So motion carries. That will be item B under old business. So we'll move on to the next item, which is approval of minutes. We have minutes from just one set from our May 4th, 2020.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of May 4th as written.
I'll second. Any discussion? Nope. All those, oh, Robin.
Selectwoman Lawrence,
Aye.
Selectman Blessington,
Aye.
First Selectwoman Waschinsky.
Aye. All right, motion carries. The next item is present to speak. We ask that you identify yourself for the record. I don't know if we have any callers. It looks like everyone might be on camera.
I am a caller.
And so, I'm corrected. We do have at least one caller.
And I am as well, Jim Bulick.
Okay. All right, Jim, did you want to speak?
Yes, I'll speak on behalf of our Willington, first of all, Jim Bulick, Laurel Drive. The Willington Republican Town Committee submitted a nomination for Brenda Abrams to fill the vacancy on the Board of Education when Republican Liz Perry resigned. And we strongly urge the selectmen to consider and remember the Willington voters. They were the ones that selected Republican Liz Perry. We ask that you do likewise and select a Republican to fill that vacancy. I do also want to thank, there's a numerous amount of people that came forward and offer to fill this position, that many of them that have past experience on the Board of Ed, many of them that were former teachers and all that. And I do want to thank all of them for feeling strongly enough to come out and throw their hat in the ring. But I think the right decision is to nominate a Republican candidate, the one that our Republican Town Committee endorsed, Brenda Abrams. Thank you.
I know we had one other caller that wanted to speak. So Donna, I believe I heard you say you wanted to speak.
Yes, please. Thank you. Donna Cook, 77 Common Road. The first is a statement that I would like to be included in the minutes. Dear Board of Selectmen, there have been instances in the past when an elected official has needed to resign. Traditionally, that individual has been replaced with a qualified person from the same party to finish out the term of the person resigning, thus preserving the will of the people. The people of Willington voted for a Republican for the Board of Education because that is the platform they wanted to support. Brenda Abrams is not only qualified, but did receive the next highest number of votes during that election. So that's the first thing. The second is later when you are discussing the budget in that way, I'd like you to please keep in mind that unfortunately I've heard through numerous sources that Pratt & Whitney is cutting wages 10%. I know many people that have been told that their wages are being frozen and that the last check, layoffs and furloughs were approximately 15%. I heard someone say that they felt that this might go as high as 25%. I am concerned for our town, for our state. These are unprecedented times. And please, as you're making your decisions, keep in mind that we have 125 children that are receiving free meals, breakfasts and lunches, because their families can't afford to feed them. So this is a real problem in our town. So I ask that that all be kept in mind as you make the very difficult budget decisions that you need to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone on video who would like to speak? If I raise your hand and then I'll try to get one of you. All right. Lori, we'll start with you. All right. I see your hand. If you raise your hand, at least 3 of you, I saw you. So we'll go in that order. Lori.
Can I, before we have speakers, can I ask if all people mute who are not currently speaking, if you can mute yourselves? I'm getting a lot of feedback. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Lori Semperbon, 271 Turnpike Road. I would like to speak to the Board of Education appointments. First of all, there is no state statute about appointment by current party, and we don't have a town charter that says that. Second of all, I think we should choose the best person for the job. Laura Rodriguez has volunteered to be a candidate. She's raised kids in the system. She was also a teacher in the system, and she's very involved in many aspects of STEM education. She is an excellent candidate for the Willington Board of Ed. And thirdly, since it was mentioned by somebody else about the politics, I don't think it was fair that the Republicans put someone's name on the ballot who didn't really want to serve, was cajoled into serving for a couple of months and then quit. Let's get someone who's committed to helping the Board of Ed move forward and who is committed to serving on the Board of Ed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Tom, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if there was.
Identify yourself for the record.
Oh, sorry. Yep, Tom Snyder, Willington Hill Road, Fire Chief, Willington Hill Fire Department. Just wanted to speak on behalf of the service that was in capital improvement. I just wanted to know if there was any changes in that decision to cut that out of there. I know that the payment for it was supposedly coming from Fund 17, which is not a direct taxation on the people. So I just wanted to know if there was changes or considerations in keeping that in the CIP plan for this year.
We actually just added CIP discussion to the agenda, so we'll be speaking on it later. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Michelle Cunningham. So I have to scroll, and then Matt will go to you after. We can't hear you, Michelle. Michelle, I don't know if you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. While we see if we can fix that, I'm gonna move on to someone else currently. Matt, if you want to identify yourself for the record and go ahead.
Yeah, Matthew Clark, 42 Burt Latham Road. I also rise to speak about the Board of Education appointment. The Willington Republican Party put forward 3 or 4 very qualified replacement candidates, including the next highest vote getter in the last election. And each of these volunteers was voted down by Democrats on the Board of Education. not because they're not qualified or they lack good character. I attended one of the meetings. There was no discussion whatsoever about the candidates. They just voted them down. They were voted down because they're Republicans. So tonight, the Democrat-controlled Board of Selectmen is set to overrule the will of the people of Willington by installing a Democrat in a seat that was filled by a Republican. 2 towns in our immediate area have statutes or bylaws prohibiting what our Board of Selectmen is about to do in a few minutes. These towns prohibit what our Board of Selectmen is poised to do because it's wrong. It's wrong to disrespect the will of the voters of Willington. There should be no place for petty, nasty politics in Willington. Is this really what we want for our town? Is it really what we want to teach our children? I asked that the Board of Selectmen, there's a popular thing, what was it now, the meme that goes around the internet all the time, be the change you want to see. Well, I ask our selectmen to be the change they want to see. I ask you to table the Board of Education vacancy from your agenda tonight. And I would ask that you consider what you're teaching our young people. I'd ask that you're teaching them that the will of the voters can be overruled by a simple majority vote, like you're scheduled to take tonight. I ask that you consider the damage you're doing to the faith in our government. And I ask Ms. Rodriguez to please withdraw her name for consideration. I ask that you honor the will of the people of Willington and vote to appoint one of the qualified Republican candidates or nominees to the vacant Republican Board of Education seat. Alternatively, I ask that you advise the Board of Education to vote to approve one of the 4 qualified Republican nominees for the vacant Board of Education seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Michelle, let's try take 2. No. I don't know if you want to try to call in. I know Michelle wants that you can, if you want to use the chat box and something you'd like to say, we could read in, Michelle, if you'd like to do that. I'll go on to Ms. Testa. You have to unmute yourself and identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, Elena Testa, 11 Meadow Lane, Willington. I would like to speak on behalf of Vacancy to fill, and my major concern is not even about the candidate, but about keeping the results of the election valid. The election of this town, the same as any other election, is the highest authority. And the result of that election was the 4 seats went to Republican and 3 to Democrats. And to overrule the decision of the highest authority is a very serious thing to do. So I truly encourage and I hope that the Board of Selectmen will not overstep the authority given to it and will honorably respect the results of the election and will appoint a Republican candidate, especially that there is no lack in a highly qualified candidate for that position, which were officially endorsed by the Republican committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give Michelle a couple minutes. Was there anyone else present to speak? Yes, Stephanie and then Elaine. Stephanie, you can unmute yourself and just identify yourself for the record.
Stephanie Summers, 4Y Road. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to speak up for Laura Rodriguez as a candidate for the Board of Ed. Not only has she educated a ton of children in town in the STEM field, which I think is crucial for female role models to be on the stage with, and she has done that supremely well in her history. She's also pursuing a doctorate and is taught at the college level locally. She's eminently qualified. She's one of the most qualified candidates we've had come in. And I think that's really important that the board has the strongest candidates possible and that it not become a matter of partisan politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Newcomb, you can unmute yourself and identify yourself for the record.
Yes, Elaine Newcomb, 28 Fermier Road. I volunteered to be considered to fill the Board of Education vacancy created by the resignation of Liz Perry. I'd like to offer some clarity regarding the replacement process. The Board of Education meeting, April 23rd, took up the business of filling the vacancy from 3 volunteer candidates. Despite pertinent professional history, prior service in town government, and solid qualifications to serve, the Board of Education did not vote a majority for any one candidate. At the BOE meeting of May 12th, the board again addressed the item to fill the vacancy. At that time, 2 additional qualified candidates offered to be considered. As the Board of Education bylaws require the Board of Selectmen to fill the vacancy if not filled within 30 days by the Board of Ed, it seems obvious that the 3 Democratic members of the Board of Education locked arms to ensure a tie vote twice to pass the task on to the Democrat majority Board of Selectmen to deny a Republican candidate replacing a Republican resignation from the Board of Education. Having run for office and being elected to your positions, one would think you have some respect for the electoral process. It therefore seems the obvious candidate for you would be the next highest vote getter in the 2019 election, Brenda Adams, Republican. Abrams. The only reason to deny her the seat would be pure partisan politics. As a fellow candidate, I endorse her to fill the vacancy. Thank you. I will send that email that in too.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? Is Michelle back on the phone?
I am. Can you hear me on the phone?
I can. I'll come back to the other video caller. We'll go ahead and go with Michelle.
Thank you so much. This is Michelle Cunningham, 41 Liska Road. I apologize that I was unable to join you by video before. Obviously, something is not working on my computer. So I apologize that I was not able to hear all of the comments as I was leaving the video to get on the call. But I did want to lay out the support for Laura Rodriguez and why the Democrats in town unitedly chose her as the nominee we would like to put forward. And that is truly in part because of her experience. She's got 20 years as a 20 years as a teacher. She's currently an assistant professor of science education at Eastern Connecticut State University. She's worked at Hall Middle School for more than a decade. She's actually unable to be with us tonight because they're having a meeting of the Willington Scholarship Foundation, where for more than 12 years she has worked to raise money to send Willington children to college. Her dedication to the town is unparalleled, and it makes her the strongest candidate. And while there might have been a gentleman's handshake agreement years and years ago, the Board of Education has not been following that principle for quite some time. And this is not something new that people feel like all of a sudden we're changing the rules. There were no rules. There was no agreement in place when I started on the Board of Education that I was aware of. The idea is that we should pick the candidate that is most qualified. And if we can't, then there are other processes to take place. We disagreed about the process on how to do this. We did not have time to have full vetting of all of the candidates, and for that reason, the Board of Education started months ago looking at some new processes to possibly change our policy to give us more time to look at candidates and have conversations about how to determine who's the most qualified. However, that is still in the committee process and has not left the committee process and been brought to the full board. So I do know that it's something that we're working to address. We just have not been able to do that as of yet for this process. So I ask that the Board of Selectmen help to break this tie that has crippled our capacity at the Board of Education to select a candidate. I ask that you consider Laura Rodriguez's record and her commitment to the town as being paramount. Her commitment to being present for all of the board meetings and for serving the rest of the term is also very important. We really only want candidates who are going to come forward who are serious about this commitment and not only show up occasionally. So I think it's really essential that the Board of Selectmen take that into consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, you can unmute yourself. Mike, can you unmute Tracy Anderson?
Yep. I've unmuted her on my end.
You should be able to unmute yourself, Tracy. No, you're still muted.
Okay,
There
can you
you
hear
go.
me?
Yes.
Okay, just putting aside politics and traditions, I just request that you choose a candidate, the best candidate who's going to uphold balancing our fiscal responsibility while continuing our commitment to students who will help us to maintain small class sizes with personalized attention, ongoing professional development for staff, and after-school activities, and which are all been stated as priorities to the community, parents, and the boards of education. So that's, I hope that you can do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else present to speak?
Let me just see. We had one or two people that were on the phone. I'm gonna hit the unmute button for everybody just in case. All right, so everybody should be able to unmute if they're looking to speak.
I know we have someone on the line who was going to speak to item A of new business, but has to leave our meeting at 7 p.m. for another commitment. If it's possible, we can hear from her under present to speak to give us a little bit of insight onto that item, if the selectman would so have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's fine.
Liz, all right, Liz, I think Liz, you're unmuted if you want to go ahead.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Peasy, 47 Timber Lane. I am your Region 19 representative for E.O. Smith High School. And I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about where we stand with our school resource officers. We unanimously voted as the Board of Education to hire school resource officers for E.O. Smith for the beginning of this school year. And it was approved a year ago now to have the school resources officers present on campus based on security concerns. And it was voted unanimously by our Board of Education and then handled on the business administrative side with the Mansfield Town office, because we are a regional school district. And so the hiring of SROs has to happen with where the school is physically located. At the time, they had a new town manager who approved the hiring, and we proceeded with hiring the resource officers, having them in the building for the year until the town manager was then let go, and the town council was made aware that they actually have these resource officers on their payroll. In the spring, in the winter, there were numerous meetings with lots of representatives coming to speak in support of the SROs, including students. And I think where it's important for us to realize as a town is that the town of Mansfield is making the decisions for the Region 19, even though the Region 19 Board of Education had voted for it. This is something that's in statute because we are a regional district, so it's not something that we can really control. Our only other option is if the town of Mansfield says they do not want to have the SROs, then we can hire armed security officers, which would be less trained, less qualified, and not really a route that we want to take. So what we are doing is asking for your support as a board to support the Board of Education that made the decision and not allow the town of Mansfield to override that.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate your thoughts since I know you have to go. And we'll take this up under new business item A.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Was there anyone else who was present to speak? There will be an opportunity at the end of our meeting for you to speak again. So we'll move on to correspondence. Mail here has been relatively slow. Any correspondence that we did receive in email form regarding matters in this agenda, the selectmen received and are on file, but other than that, we have nothing. All right, we'll move on to selectmen's report. So unless something's happened in the last few hours, the fuel tank replacement We're still waiting for the tank, and we're expected to begin in June. Correct, Troy? No changes there? Okay. The concrete testing report, hopefully will be ready in time for one of our June meetings. I know he's had a little bit of a backlog there. I've been assured there's nothing of utter importance that would we'd need to know today. So if we were in danger of that, we would have heard from that already. I wanted to give you just a little bit of an update. I think I've mentioned to you before, when the pandemic began, I did a budget freeze for any non-essential spending. And with that, Donna, right now, it looks like she's forecasting about $100,000 surplus for this fiscal year. So we will see how that goes, if we have any additional expenses that may change, but so we may return more than we had, than we thought, just because we really stopped spending. Training for the new software, Infinite Visions, in the finance office is in full swing. I want to acknowledge how hard our finance staff is working in order to maintain their typical daily tasks on top of training, and now training virtually. They had planned to have somebody here in the TOB with them every day, and that's altered how they're able to train, and it makes it a lot more difficult. So we are still on schedule to go live on July 1, but it's making for an incredibly increased workload on our finance staff. And I want to acknowledge how hard they are working well outside of their typical working hours in order to get this done, and some from home. So I want to thank them for their continued support on that. The other item I wanted to mention to you is I had said before that our CBA was set to end on June 30th, and we were preparing for the negotiation process for a new CBA when the pandemic hit, and in-person meetings were stalled. And I had spoke to this board a couple of times about working with the union to sign an MOU in order to extend that contract. I was able to do that. I did, our town attorney is on the line. I did work under the guidance of our town attorney, making sure I did have authority in which to do so. And so the MOU I signed extends the contract 1 year to June 30, 2021. And the only change was a 2% increase in union wages. There was no change to health insurance. We did not, it was not a reopener. There has been question as to whether or not I have the authority to do so. Ryan, I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
I think so. How's that working?
Oh, that's working. We've had a little difficulty tonight. So I reached out to the town attorney when this began to see whether or not that was something I had to do, if we still needed a full negotiation team while the current contract was still in effect. Ryan, if you want to explain a little bit about the process.
Sure, of course. And John, it's great to see you healthy and back. The process, this is something that's been very common over the past few months with regard to collective bargaining agreements in municipalities and even in the private sector as well. You have a situation where it's very difficult to get together to meet across the table. There is the possibility of doing Zoom negotiations, but frankly, I don't think that's a particularly efficient or productive way of doing it. Negotiations are hard enough when you're in the same room. I think it's important to be able to get a feel for the folks who you are negotiating with. It's very difficult to do that over Zoom. But more, I think more importantly, with so many things in flux right now and so much uncertainty, it was going to be very difficult to put together proposals for the next 3 years. I think it made a lot of sense. This guidance came from Erica, and she and I discussed it, but it made a lot of sense given all the uncertainty right now to say, hey, let's just freeze everything in place. We'll go with a 2% increase, which is what was budgeted, which is what they were getting under the current contract, obviously not for next year, but that's what they were getting anyway. So it wasn't like that number was just cherry picked. It's been consistent with what they've been getting. And since the contract hadn't expired, Erica has the authority as the chief executive officer of the town, like she would for any other MOU with the contract, that doesn't require, the contract has not expired. So she's able to sign an MOU, and the union signed the MOU. And as far as I'm concerned, we're good to go.
John or Liza? Go ahead, John.
Selectman Blessington, I'm a little concerned here, a little confused. If we were going to extend the contract for a year, which actually was my original idea, that would be fine, but that would mean extending the contract for a year and not piling on a increase. I had earlier, at an earlier meeting, suggested that we should freeze, ask the governor to help us out, or whatever we had to do to freeze salary increases, or even, well, that was not going to happen. I asked if we could freeze salary increases, and first selectman, I believe, said that it would be wrong. It would be unfair because we should bring this before the people. We couldn't do that without having a town meeting and bringing it before the people. And now apparently it was fair to give them a 2% increase without bringing it before the people. We hold all kinds of meetings with Zoom. Whenever we have to hold a meeting, we use Zoom. Could we not have done union negotiations with Zoom? I don't think this is right.
I will say, John, that, I had hoped for an MOU with a zero. That is certainly something that I had asked. And there have been other MOUs that have been signed that have had budgetary restrictions. I certainly didn't do this to go around anyone or go around the people. And I had mentioned several times that I was working on an MOU. And so, I continued on with that without a different direction from this board. So what I wanted to be clear in was how the process went about, and what the authority was. Again, not trying to take advantage of any authority, but the union as well was not comfortable in this virtual world, in this setting, in order to conduct negotiations. So I think if both parties had been open to that, it would be one thing, but they were not in favor of that. And it would be very difficult a process to manage. And in multiple other municipalities, I don't know if Ryan has had any experience himself with other municipalities in the same situation, but several have entered into similar MOUs with contracts that were expiring. So this isn't, wasn't nuanced necessarily.
And John,
go ahead, Brian.
John, I would look at it from a strategic standpoint of, first of all, 2% in the current environment is good regardless. In terms of what other states are getting, what other comparable towns are getting, 2% is not something to turn our nose up at, and frankly, it's actually better than what the averages are. So it's okay from that perspective. I don't love it. I don't love it by any means, but I certainly don't think it's something that should be a real negative. I think it sort of just is what it is, and I think it's going to give us a lot of ammunition going forward. Especially, we're going to be back at the table with these folks in a few months, and we're basically going to have a conversation that says, look at how reasonable the town was, look at how the town played fair. Now let's have a real talk about the next 3 years, where now we have a much clearer idea, hopefully, of how this pandemic is going to wind up. So I think you have to also consider this in the strategic framework of the next couple years as well.
Ron, no disrespect, but usually when it comes to union negotiations, we engage a legal firm that specializes in that because they're dealing with
That's what I do, John. John, that's what I do, John. I'm a labor attorney.
okay. In spite of that, we're 2% was very good. I don't hold with that. I'm wondering on these other towns that have signed MOUs, has the first selectman or mayor or whoever the boss is in that particular town just gone off and signed it, mentioned to the others, I'm working on it, and then one day say, hey, I signed it, didn't feel it necessary to talk to you. And again, 2% in an ordinary year. If the coronavirus had not happened, we would probably be very happy to get away with 2%. But it has happened, and we're heading downhill. And 2% is going to be very nice. I think it should have been discussed.
I certainly understand what you're saying, John. You know, and just to allay any concerns, I negotiate for a number of towns, and I negotiate in the private sector, frankly, more frequently than I do the public sector. So I've had plenty of run-ins with Teamsters and 1199, and I know the terrain well. So no concerns there. As far as the other towns go, you know, every town has a different form of government and different approach to it. I can try to get a list of, you know, which towns have done what through either CCMC or through those towns themselves directly. I know some towns have taken it upon themselves. The executive has signed MOUs. Usually MOUs are signed by the executive officer without going back to a board. That's, if the contract had expired, I would have said it's a different process. But as long as the contract is in place, the usual rules of the game will still apply. And you know, I think it would be the unusual situation for a executive officer to go back to a board and check for an MOU to be signed. Now, you know, perhaps you wish that had happened, but in terms of a straight legality, there's no problem there.
In terms of good governance, there is a problem there. Again, extending the contract, yes. Giving a raise, that's not extending a contract. It's basically signing a new contract and calling it an MOU. I suppose what's done is done. I don't suppose there's anything we can do about it now, right?
I think it would be very detrimental to relations between the town and the union to, I mean, frankly, I should say this, we cannot go back on it without tremendous legal wrangling, which I don't think works in our favor at all.
So that's all I have to say about this.
Liza, do you have any?
I mean, I think you and I had spoken about this. I think, you know, I don't disagree with John that I would have liked to have known before the signatures went onto paper, whether or not it was our purview to make any decisions relating to the contract or the MOU rather, because, you know, I understand it is within your purview to sign. I think it would have been worth a conversation before signatures went on paper. With that being said, legally, we all clearly understand that this is one of the many powers given to the first selectman, which is why your position is full-time, which is why you are a full-time salaried employee and first selectwoman for our town. That is the reason, you know, for your title over our titles. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with John that I think I would have liked to have had a very clear understanding of what was happening and when, just because we are in this very strange situation. But I don't know that I would have likely would not have recommended any different course of action, and would have just have listened to understand what the process was, since we had some previous discussions, and just would have liked to have been a part of that sort of conversation before pen to paper.
And I hear what you're both saying. And again, having the conversations in this meeting and then not having different feedback, I think is a little bit of it was me making an assumption, right? Sometimes they don't always, haven't always assumed, right, that you understood the entire process. And I think moving forward, there's always a different way, and we can learn from that. But what I wanted to be clear was this wasn't some go around to put something in place on behalf of the town in any way, shape, or form. We were in unusual circumstances at an unusual time, and trying to move forward and not renegotiate an entire contract under circumstances that all parties weren't willing to do, and that we thought we could do properly. And I do think that there'll certainly be some room for us to discuss this when we move into negotiations next year. I think it can come into play for us. So I hear what you're both saying, and moving forward, we certainly have different discussions. There are many MOUs that are signed over the course of time. And while I know this was different, which is why I consulted the town attorney in a little bit different manner and did discuss at Board of Selectmen meetings that I was seeking an MOU. And I guess we could be more clear in the future about every detail of that, just so that you're aware. All right, that's all I have for status update, unless either of you had any other questions. See, Liza shaking her head no. Anything else from you, John?
No.
Okay. Brian, I thank you for your time. I'm not sure we really have anything else. If you'd like to hang around and follow the meeting, feel free. If not, continue on. We miss you too. We miss seeing people in person here. So thank you. The next item is Public Works. I know Troy, I apologize, I have to keep scrolling up to see people. Troy is still on the line with us. If you want to give us an update, Troy.
Okay. We finished grading the dirt roads around town. Sweeping is complete. We're about 3-4 weeks ahead of schedule, actually. We loomed the town green where we did some test pits earlier this fall. We loomed and seeded and finished a drainage project on Turnpike Road that we did in the fall. We had built a donation box for Human Services so they could drop some food off in the box for Jenny. We've been working on curb pickup around town and replacing the curb. Roadside mowing is still going on. We mowed the transfer station, and hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to burn the brush as long as the state allows us to, so we can start accepting brush again. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I will mention that this is Public Works Week, and we typically recognize our Public Works. And at the same time, we will take a truck that's not being used currently around town and utilize it as a way in which to fill our food pantry within a food drive. So while we're not under our normal times, if you see our Public Works guys around town, give a wave, and thanks for all that they do. Are keeping our roads clear, keeping our roads safe. They didn't have much snow to plow this year, but they still certainly have plenty of work. So I thank them for all that they do. All right, so we'll move on to new business, item A. You have before you, we heard from Liz Peasy regarding the situation between Region 19 and their school resource officer. So with that, I will move the following. Resolution in support of a school resource officer, Region 19 school system. Whereas the Willington Board of Selectmen recognizes that securing the safety and security of Region 19 students, staff, families, and visitors is a critical objective of the Region 19 Board of Education, the Region 19 administration, and the Region 19 member towns and their respective governing bodies. And whereas the Willington Board of Selectmen recognizes that it is the role of the Region 19 Board of Education, comprised of elected representatives of the towns of Willington, Mansfield, and Ashford to take such action as it shall determine is necessary and appropriate to assure the safety and security of Region 19 students, staff, families, and visitors in accordance with Connecticut State Law, Region 19 policy. And whereas the Willington Board of Selectmen acknowledges that Region 19 Board of Education voted unanimously at its December 4th, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Education to approve developing an agreement with the Connecticut State Police and the town of Mansfield to create a position of school resource officer for E.O. Smith High School with the goal of searching and hiring for the 2019-2020 school year or sooner, and the Region 19 Board action. And whereas the Willington Board of Selectmen acknowledges that school resource officers hired by the town of Mansfield under a memorandum of agreement between the town of Mansfield, Region 19, and the Connecticut State Police, and two, subject to the rigorous ongoing training and certification requirements required of school resource officers under applicable Connecticut law and regulations, is a prudent and effective measure for meeting the shared school safety and security objectives for the Region 19 Board of Education and the Region 19 member towns. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the Willington Board of Selectmen affirms its support for the Region 19 Board of Education's decision to engage school resource officers in the exercise of the Region 19 Board of Education's authority and responsibility to assure the safety and security of its students, staff, families, and visitors. Resolved further that the Willington Board of Education supports the continuation of the Region 19 School Resource Officer Program for the 2021 school year and thereafter on such terms and for such purposes as will give full effect to the Region 19 Board action. And resolved further that the Willington Board of Selectmen urges the Mansfield Town Council to support the decision of the Region 19 Board of Education to engage school resource officers and to take such action as will give full effect to the Region 19 Board action, including entering into and maintaining such agreements and/or memorandum of understanding with Region 19 and the Connecticut State Police as shall be necessary and desirable to implement and continue the School Resource Officer Program contemplated by the Region 19 Board action, approved by the Willington Board of Selectmen on May 18th, 2020. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Liza. So discussion. Ashford, as you may not know, signed a similar resolution last week. The Region 19 Board of Education, through its representatives, asked if the member towns would support the process by which these decisions are made, which is through the region and their board and honoring those commitments. So I think this is less about supporting the program, but the process by which Region 19 has its own governing body in their Board of Education, and that as member towns, we elect and send representatives to that board to vote on our behalf. And with the issue, I think you heard Liz speak to the Mansfield Town Council now not in support of the program, but I think they all have various reasons why they don't support the program, but I firmly believe it's the region's authority. But because of the statute that says the actual officer has to be hired by the town of Mansfield, puts a little bit of a different spin on this. So the Region 19 Board of Ed has asked for support from both Ashford and Willington in this.
Yeah, just a couple questions. What is the difference between a school resource officer and a armed security officer?
Liz, if you're still on the line, you want to unmute yourself and speak to that. I don't want to speak to the specifics of the program.
Yeah, Erica, it's Lynn here. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, so the difference is that the school resource officers have required training that they need to attend. They are certified by the state police department, I believe. But I'm also in agreement with Erica that what we're asking for is not a rehash of what the decision was made, but that the Board of Education be backed by the towns that send their students to E.O. Smith.
I would think that if our representatives on the Region 19 Board of Ed had voted in favor of this, which I believe you said they did.
Unanimously.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It was unanimous.
Vote.
Okay, so, which I believe they did, then that would already have shown our backing for it. I just, maybe it's just that we're calling it a school resource officer. Is this a policeman?
Yes, the two that we have in place are retired police officers.
They are, so they are, in fact, police officers. And and if we were to hire an armed security officer, we could hire Joe Blow off the street and give him a gun license and let him walk around the school, or would he have to have qualifications too?
The training is much less, and we don't feel comfortable with making that decision.
No.
Cool.
And potentially much less qualified candidate. Liza?
School resource officers are, that's a very specific role and position. It's more than just a title. It's a model that's used across the country. Whereas armed security guards, it's, I mean, it is comparative because there's some overlap in some of the functions that they would do, but a school resource officer is really trained to do more community wellness, community safety, rather than just patrolling a door. So it is a much more involved, in-depth, school-based model of public safety that is recognized nationally in schools across the country. So it is a very specific thing beyond just sort of door patrol.
I agree. And again, the resolution is more support of the process of supporting Region 19's authority to make these decisions than hashing out whether or not, what it is they should do. I think the argument is that isn't necessarily our role. We certainly, as individuals, can speak at Board of Education meetings for the region as townspeople, as taxpayers, and I have done so on a personal level. I also have a student there for at least another month. And so I know it's certainly been a hot topic issue. The last Region 19 Board of Education meeting, they gave an update and the two school resource officers were there. And I think, in my opinion, the region made a good choice in both the hiring of those two specific officers and the program. I think if you heard the update from Region 19, they have probably far exceeded the ways in which they could support our students at E.O. Smith, well beyond, I think, what people expected, and it's been a positive impact by staff and students alike, and overwhelmingly positive. So this resolution is really in support of the process and us saying that, we respect the region's authority to make these decisions. And it really holds no power, except that they had asked if our member towns would be willing to support the process and the action and share that with them. And so I said I would bring it to our townspeople. Our selectmen, I'm sorry.
There's a motion on the floor, yes?
There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. I see Robin reaching for the phone.
Selectwoman Boritz,
Aye.
Selectman Blessington,
Although I feel that it's probably unnecessary, I will vote aye.
First Selectwoman Waschinsky,
Aye. Right, so we will have the vote was unanimous, motion carries. I thank you both. And Liz, thank you too, and as to you, our other Willington Region 19 board members, and all those at Region 19 who are working on behalf of the safety of our students and staff, etc. So I thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
The next item, we have two appointments. The first one is an Eastern Highlands Health District representative. We had a representative, Paul Shore was our representative to Eastern Highlands, and he left that position. We have not filled that role. So Willington has a voting seat on the board of directors at Eastern Highlands. Since Paul left, we have not had a voting member. I have been attending meetings and participate in conversation and sharing all the updates, but we don't have a vote. So we don't, we don't have an active voting voice. So, which is why you see the potential motions if someone would. So I am willing to be that representative. Listen, if somebody came forward and wanted to, I would not discourage. I think more participation is good. But I think it's important that we, especially now in this time, that we have a voting voice at the health district. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Erica Wyszynski as Willington's representative for Eastern Highland Health District Board of Directors, filling a vacancy effective May 18th, 2020, expiring May 30th, 2021.
I'll second that.
All right, a discussion. So that was the end. Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the end of what Paul's term would have been, correct?
Yeah.
I'm just filling that vacancy until this time next year. So if someone else came forward, otherwise we'd be looking to appoint again. Any other discussion? All right, John looked like he wanted to say something. All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to a vote.
Selectwoman Boritz,
Aye.
Selectman Blessington,
Aye.
First Selectwoman Wyszynski,
Aye. I don't know if I should abstain, if I should vote. All right, motion carries. Thank you. I'll just keep going to meetings. All right, the next item on our agenda is filling a vacancy of the Willington Board of Education. The Board of Ed had a resignation on April 17th, and to date, they have not been able to fill that seat. And per their bylaws, Board of Ed Policy 9221, if the board is unable to fill a vacancy within 30 days after it occurs, the Board of Selectmen may appoint a qualified person to fill the vacancy until the next town election. In your packet, you have communication from the Willington Republican Town Committee recommending Brenda Abrams. You also have a letter from the Willington Democratic Town Committee recommending Laura Rodriguez, and you have a letter from Ms. Rodriguez expressing her interest in the position. I don't see either one of them on the call. I know I heard someone earlier say that Laura was in a scholarship foundation meeting. I would have liked to have asked both of them, know that yes, they are interested and committed and hearing their thoughts. That doesn't look like it's going to be something this board is going to be able to do. I would have liked the Board of Education to make this decision. That's where the decision lies, but then their policy goes further if they did not make a decision. I attended those meetings. I didn't hear from candidates except to hear their names when they were voted on. I don't know why each member voted the way in which they did. But I do know that it is our role now to fill the vacancy. And we have two candidates before us. We do follow state statute. There is no statute that outlines this process. I hear everyone's opinions on it. We heard from both sides of what has now become a political question. And I think maybe it's time in this town we put something in writing. So we aren't in positions. Future boards of selectmen are not in this position. The decision is made clear. There really is no, maybe they're voting on 3 different people from one party and that's what they're voting on. But it's not about party politics. It's about a candidate for the Board of Education. And that's what I want us to look at tonight is who is the best candidate for the Board of Education and maintaining education in the town of Willington. And that's all I think that we should look at currently. I'd like to, the thoughts of either of you. Liza, if you have something you'd like to share.
I have a question. I know that Michelle said that they were working on creating some alternative process for filling the vacancies. Are we obligated to fill at this point at the Board of Selectmen level? Is there a way to push back to the Board of Education to fill this vacancy? This is the second time the Board of Education has been unable to fill their own seats.
Right.
And it's the second time that the Board of Selectmen has been asked. And I would like to add, with some pretty unpleasant accusations in the mix directed towards the Board of Selectmen, specifically Erica and myself as the 2 Democrats, which is excessively unnecessary in this process. So I would love to see a situation and a scenario in which the Board of Education is able to fill their seats without it coming to mediation to the Board of Selectmen through this contentious process. So if there's any way that we can push that back and require them to do that, I would really like to do that as our first course of action, and not take action as the Board of Selectmen. As others have noted, the Board of Education has been elected and to run the Board of Education, and thus they should be the ones to be making this decision.
So John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you've heard some nasty things about yourself. I've heard some nasty things about me too, because we're in this position and this has become a totally political question. I would point out that I believe the Board of Education at one point tried to put into the bylaws tried to make it part of the bylaws that the party whose person had resigned would be able to endorse the replacement. And they were told by the attorney that that could not be done because the state statutes do not say it can be done, but they don't say it can't be done either. I'm not sure where that came from, and I understand that our neighboring town, which does not have a charter and is ruled by a Board of Selectmen, does have this as in their bylaws. So maybe they're illegal. I don't know. Be that as it may, I agree. We should send it back to the Board of Ed because this is political, and let them fight it out. And sooner or later, maybe they can reach a compromise candidate, and if not, they will be 3-3. But I don't think that this decision should be made tonight, and I don't think it should be made here.
I agree with you both. I'm not sure and I don't know if either of our members on the Board of Education can answer, or if the superintendent who's on this call knows the answer to that as to whether or not we can just not fill it. They have a policy, and do we kick it back? And for how long, right? So they have a policy that gives them an amount of time to debate amongst themselves. It gave them an opportunity. I think they discussed it at 2 meetings. And still were deadlocked because this one missing member makes this board currently, this current make of the board, 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And so they happen to vote down those lines. Again, this is the second time it's come to us. I do think, John, if it's possible, maybe it's time we put something in writing in this town, and maybe that be from the town perspective, not one particular board. If we have a policy like that, I think it should be every board. So I'm not sure that it's a Board of Education policy or if it is a town policy, resolution, and or ordinance. And so that's something that I think, if the selectmen would like, I think we should look into. I think we should look into that. If we had a charter, this would be spelled out. The first time we had this issue and the conversation came up, the town attorney, made it clear that if we had a charter, there would be no question. It would be filled by the seat that the political party that won that seat. And that's how it would go. Willington doesn't have any such rule on the books, while our neighboring towns may, and that's they play by those rules. We're kind of the wild, wild west over here, and nobody wins in this situation when this comes to this board. And again, the accusations that were made simply on this call by members of the public who have assumed the outcome of this, I'm incredibly disappointed by. We weren't even given an opportunity to have a conversation about it before you decided how we would vote and why we would vote. So that's disappointing.
And I would like to add that I've repeatedly invited and requested members of the community who have questions about why I vote the way I do to meet with me. I am here for conversations. No one has taken me up on that offer. So to hear several of you make assumptions about our motivation and for making decisions the way that we do is, hey, I know I ran for office and this is part of the package. So I absolutely understand that. But I also don't want it to go unchecked that, some of the assumptions that are made are truly unfair. And I really encourage people to reach out to me and speak with me directly. I would be more than happy to have conversations with anybody who has questions about decisions that I make. And it is how it works, Peter, very much how it works. So in any event, is it possible for us to do this, to send this back to the Board of Education? And if not, honestly, I'm at the point where I would have to abstain in a vote. Neither of the candidates are on the call. All I have are 2, short paragraphs from the Democratic Town Committee and then from the Republican Town Committee. There's no way for me to answer any of the questions that I have right now regarding these 2 candidates. So I don't know how I would be expected to make a decision based on having no information.
John, I think you had wanted to say something.
Yeah, if I can, slight correction here. We were not told that if we had a charter, we could go by the town's or by the party's recommendation, but we couldn't do it because we didn't have a charter. We were told that if we had a charter that said that, then we could do it. But we were also told that we could not pass bylaws by the town to make that part of our town. And
who was told that, John, and by whom and when? I'm curious.
I don't have the dates here. I'm pretty sure that.
Was it recent or was it some?
Not the Board of Selectmen. This is the Board of Ed. Tried to make such a bylaw, and the attorney apparently, or at least as I understand it, the attorney told them that we couldn't do it because we can only operate under state statute. And I thought that, and I believe I was in the hospital at the time. And when I heard this, I thought that was kind of strange because I thought we could modify state, or we can't change state statute, but we can make our own rules under state statute.
Correct.
So maybe we should look into doing that again. And
I don't disagree. I think, listen, we hear people say there was a gentleman's agreement. And that's all that it is, right? And so each time there's a different party or politics is at play, it's going to come to this. And then we're put in an uncomfortable position of having to make a choice. I can tell you personally, despite what anyone might have said earlier or think, I spent 8 years on the Board of Education, and I was there simply to work on education in Willington and not politics at all. I did spend a good amount of time where politics was not what ran the Board of Education, but education in Willington. And that's what I want to see is the best person there. And I wish that board had made this decision and we weren't having this conversation. If it came up recently, I can tell you it wasn't our town attorney that said those things because that I am aware of. I didn't ask him the question. That would have been a Board of Education policy.
it was also the Board of Education's attorney that
Okay, it said that. Okay. I didn't hear that at any Board of Education meetings, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have a conversation that wasn't privileged in an executive session. So the question, I apologize if I keep looking down, I did ask our town attorney, who said he would jump back on if we need anything. I asked him if he could jump back on, and I'm just waiting for a little bit of a response to see if we could, what happens if we kick this back to the Board of Ed, because their policy, says it comes to us, but we have nothing, no statute or anything else in writing but their policy. So, and then the question is for how long, right? They've already exceeded their policy. And then the question would be, how long do they kick it back to us until we say no, take it back again? And we have this volley. Meanwhile, important decisions could be put aside and held in these continuous 3-3 votes over there because they only have 6 members, because either the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education aren't willing to take up the matter. So at some point, one of our 2 boards is going to have to do something. How long we wait for that, I'm not really sure. So if the board would so allow, if we could move on to the next item of business and see if our attorney responds to me, if he can get back on, and then we could come back to this item. Liza and or John, do you agree? Are you okay with that? And hopefully he can answer the question, is there any reason we can't push it back?
I would, I agree that we should do that. I would suggest that we table the this till the next meeting. And because I think you're right, we probably should push it back to.
So if you're both agreeable, if we can move it forward, if we can just move on to the next item, and then if he can come back, we can, have that discussion as to whether or not we can kick it back to them, and then have that. I think we could probably move on something tonight, one way or the other.
Because we're waiting for the attorney. I'm fine to wait for the attorney.
So we'll give him a little bit, see if he can come on, and I'll move on with the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. So the next item, and it's going to be a little show and tell here. The next item is awarding our propane contract. I may ask Robin to be taking some notes on these as we open them. I have, hopefully you can see, I'm no Vanna White here. We sent out 1, 2, 6. We sent out 6 requests for bids, solicitations, and we received back 1, 2, 3, 4 bids, and 1 is a return. So this was a return to sender. They are all sealed, and so I will open them one by one now. Okay, here's my best. So I'll show you each one. The first is from High Grade Gas Service. This one was received on the 14th of May. I should have gotten a letter opener so I don't get a paper cut. You didn't know you were coming for some show and tell, did you? All right. This is I, Nelson Aiken, represent High Grade Propane. Nelson Aiken of the above named firm hereby submit the following bid in accordance with the town of Willington's request for bids for propane dated April 16th, 2020. Price per gallon, $1.07. Labor rate per hour, regular, $75. Labor rate per hour after hours, $120. And labor rate on holidays and weekends, $120. Not applicable under trip charge. And it was signed May 13th by Nelson Aiken High Grade Propane. Is that visible to everyone? Can you see? Okay. All right. The next is from Hocon Gas of Suffield. Sealed. Hocon Gas. This was received. This one is not dated. What date was received? And some of them aren't stamped because Robin has been working from home some days, so she wasn't here on the day it actually came in. All right, this is 2 pages, but one is the cover letter that we sent. I, Kevin Veering, represent Hocon Gas. I, Kevin, of the above named firm, hereby submit the following bid in accordance with the town of Willington's request for bids for propane dated April 16th. Price of propane per gallon, 99 cents. Labor rate, $65. Regular. Labor rate after hours, $75. Labor rate on holidays and weekends, $75. $0 for trip charge. And this was signed by Kevin Veering, Hocon Gas, 4/21/20. Robin, if I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay. The next is from Northeast Oil and Propane, Inc. out of Danielson. Not like the Oscars envelope reading at all. I, Daryl Scott of Northeast Oil and Propane of the above named firm, hereby submit the following bid in accordance with the town of Willington's request for bids for propane dated April 16th, 2020. Price per gallon, $1.09. Labor rate per hour regular, $129. Labor rate after hours, $193.50. Labor rate on holidays and weekends, $193.50. The trip charge is either $99 or $190. Same day, if not on auto, is for $99, and after hours trip charge is $190.
And that was afternoon?
I'm sorry?
That was which one?
This was Northeast Oil and Propane.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And that was dated Daryl Scott, 4/27/20. And the last sealed in this nice envelope from Superior Energy in Vernon. An envelope inside an envelope. We all got excited. Okay. Adam Friedman of Superior Energy of the above named firm hereby submit the following bid in accordance with the town of Willington's request for bids for propane dated April 16th, 2020. Price propane per gallon, 83.9 cents. Labor rate per hour, $99. Labor rate after hours, $99. Labor rate on holidays and weekends, $99. And no applicable trip charge. Signed by Adam Freeman of Superior Energy on May 1st. All right. So we have 4 bids. One at 109, one at 107. These are the regular gallon rates. one at 99 cents and one at 83.9. And we are looking to award a one-year bid that would go from July 1st, 2020 to June 30, 2021.
And who's our current contract with?
It's, I think, with high grade gas right now. I think we're with high grade.
Okay.
If I recall, high grade was 90. Oh, no. High grade currently is $1.07.
Erica, can I say something?
Who's this? Oh, Troy, yes.
Yeah. With high grade, they might be a little bit more, but they've had excellent service. They've come right out in the same day when we've called them. So there's no complaints with high grade right now. They fixed some stuff at the animal control place for us a couple times. They put a new heater in there this year, and they were very responsive with that.
Thank you, Troy. I think if memory serves, high grade was not the lowest bidder last year either. But our service needs, I may be wrong. Robin, do you recall?
Is it Superior? We could have Superior. I can't remember which one that we're with, but we've used Superior too. So it goes back and forth.
But high grade is who's coming out, right? So wouldn't that be where we're going if high grade is?
Then yeah, that's maybe who we had. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me. I'm home, but yeah. So we alternate between high grade and Superior. So if high grade keeps coming out now, then yes, that's who we're with. So.
Troy, have we had many after hours service calls with our current contract?
I haven't used them after hours. There was really nothing that was that pressing at the time, but they did come out. I know when the heater wasn't working in the dog pound there, they came right out. It was in the afternoon, and it was a matter of a couple hours they were out there.
All right. John or Liza, do you have any questions?
So
I wasn't fast enough to write down all of the numbers. So I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage for that. But so there's one company that's significantly less than the rest at 83.9.
Yes.
And who was that?
Superior Energy.
Okay. And do we have any reason to not consider them? Do we have any history working with them that has been challenging? If we've used them before, have we been pleased with their service?
Not in my time. Maybe Robin can speak to that. We've been pleased with them in the past. I see Robin shaking her head yes to that. Troy, do you have a recommended? John, go ahead. You have something.
Well, if Superior has been good in the past and high grade has been, Superior is a little more on the regular call, but is significantly lower. 24 cents a gallon, or 24 cents on
the
cost. So I think maybe it's time we swung back again. So I would make a motion that we award the contract to Superior Energy for 83.9 cents per gallon, $99 per call, and that's both regular and emergency call.
I'll second.
All right, motion by John, seconded by Liza to award the bid to Superior Energy. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I will move to a vote. We're ready, Robin.
Selectwoman Boritz.
Aye.
Selectman Blessington.
Aye.
First Selectwoman Washinsky.
Aye. All right, so motion carries. The bid will go to Superior Energy. I want to acknowledge thanks for all of the bids we received, and our current supplier we have had no issue with, and so at this point it's maybe as simple as a budgetary issue.
Yes.
So I thank them all. Okay, cleaning up my mess here. All right, we will move on to item item A on old business, which is a COVID update. All right, so
Erica, a quick question. Sorry, do we have to resolve new business before we move on to old business? Because we had paused.
I think we are good to pause until we give him a chance to hear on the agenda. Move on.
Okay.
We have Brenda Abrams on the call, Erica.
Okay.
I think we're waiting for the attorney.
We're waiting for the attorney. So let's move on to old business, and then we'll go back to that item after. Okay, so COVID update. So as you know, there is a reopening plan for the state that's taking place May 20th, where we're starting to see some things open. The pause button has been put on hair salons and barbershops kind of last minute as of today. So you won't see those opening yet. The guidance says early June. I did hear the governor today say June 1st, but then they refer to early June. So I'm not sure where that leaves us. It certainly affects at least one business here in Willington who was eager and ready to open. But I feel confident that the decisions are being made on a broad basis for safety of both those in working in salons and visiting salons and barbershops. So we'll look for clarification on that soon. As far as the town office building and our municipal buildings, we are following the guidelines under the governor's plan for offices. So there were different opening plans depending on what the business was. So we fall under offices. We've been working with those guidelines and spoken with the Eastern Highlands Health District. We will have to certify our office with DECD before we open again. In the meantime, we have a program administrator who will be Robin. We have to put together a plan that involves all the different aspects of putting together safety precautions in order to open. I am, most of these changes are to protect both our staff and the public as we slowly work towards reopening. I am tentatively planning to increase staff here at the TOB beginning June 8th. And what that will entail is one person in each office on a rotating basis. So if there are two people in an office, there's an A team and a B team. 1 week you work in the TOB, the next week you work at home. And the idea is that we don't, if we have an illness, our entire staff doesn't fall ill at the same time. And as we work towards a full open to the public. A couple of other things that we are working on are changes, big changes to office space. We're pretty friendly here and pretty open. When you come in, there's some glass partitions on a few offices, and they're with the exception of the tax office, which is more locked up, they're pretty open. You're not going to see that for a while. What we're putting on the outside of those windows, and the town clerk right now is completely open, it too will be closed. There'll be a plexiglass partition between the public and our staff, and there will be cutouts in that so that you could pass documents, and that will keep both the public and our staff protected while we move through this health crisis. So and it also will allow our staff to work without having to wear a mask all day long. When there's that barrier between them. We're putting in some barriers in our smaller offices where there are multiple people in between staff members so that they have a visual of each other, but they're kind of in a plexiglass cubicle moving forward. So there'll maybe some moving around of offices, and things may look a little different when you come back into the office to visit us here, but know that it's all for safety for, again, our staff and public. We're going to need to make some changes in our restrooms. We're looking at adding an automatic faucet, soap dispenser, and paper towel dispensers in the public restrooms. So on each floor, there's a men's and women's restroom. We're looking at right now one sink that's automatic. If we have to close off the other sinks, we will, so that people only use the automatic, so it's hands-free, there's less touching. Lots of cleaning protocols going to be put into place. We have to train our staff before we can open and before we can move forward. So we're going to be in this virtual forum doing some training on what that looks like. We're working together. The schools have offered some assistance from the superintendent and his staff. So we thank them for that, for helping us with a midday cleaning of our restrooms, because that will have to be done more often than we typically do. And we, as you know, we don't have a facilities staff here. We have a public works department, but on top of their regular duties, cleaning this building during the day would be an incredible challenge. So right now we're able to do it with what we have. I'm exploring other avenues where there may be other ways in which people could assist us in that. And so I'm still looking in that direction. The ultimate goal is to open back to the public. When that's going to be, I'm not sure. I'd like to hope by July 1, we have tax time. I'll be curious to see how the numbers in our state and in our town change come Wednesday and through the Memorial Day weekend. I think, you know, you may have already seen, as the weather gets nicer, people have gotten a little bit more lax when they're out and about, and now going into different businesses, whether it be eating outside at a restaurant or, you know, visiting some stores on a limited basis. I'll be curious to see what that does to our numbers, and then we'll plan from there. But we are planning forward so that we can begin to open up to the public here again. If at any time either one of you has a question, just let me know. We currently have 11 positive cases. That was as of today, so our number did jump up a little bit. In case you're wondering, I don't know who they are. I know who 2 are because I happen to be friends with them on social media and they shared, but otherwise that's not information that I'm on a need to know basis with, and I'm okay with that. I see Chief Moore is on the call. If he wanted to give us an update from the first responders standpoint, I did mention to you all before that we had several first responders test positive and were out. Alex?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So we have started to get some of the staff back. Some are still out. So things are moving forward. It's just a slow process. So we ended up with 5 personnel that tested positive. Hopefully in the next week or 2, we'll be able to get everybody back to work.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, we wish them all well, and I know it's hard on them as they continue through this process and are putting their lives on hold. So
can I make one more
absolutely
notice about that? And we'll be putting out a social media blast about it. Things look a little different when we show up to calls right now. You see a couple extra vehicles because we do have all of our personnel split up. So you may see an extra vehicle or a pickup truck sit on the side of the road. We're utilizing both of our firehouses, and Chief Snyder uses, you know, the apparatus out of his as well. But things look a little different if you only see 1 person or 2 people coming to the door. It's not that there aren't other people there to help. It's just out of our safety, we're trying to make sure that we're keeping people safe and back and not exposing everybody at the same time.
Yeah, I think we see in that instance how quickly it can spread. So yep. There certainly is some concern. On that front, I want to thank Willington Hill. They've allowed us to use their house currently to house COVID positive first responders. So I want to thank them for that. It certainly has come in handy. There have been different avenues we could explore. Some are putting them up in hotels, but they're as far away as Glastonbury. So certainly not as easy. So I appreciate that. So to Chief Snyder, thank you to your department for that. And we will be clean in between. And when this is all done, we will be taking care of cleaning the house so that it is it is ready for the usage in which you plan to use it, and not continuously holding patients. So I thank you. We did, just so you know, and I believe I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. They're there. That's, you know, their home while they're quarantined currently. So we have the televisions here in the town office building. So we moved them over there so that they could at least have a little bit of entertainment while they're in a house without, you know, their own comfort and belongings for a while, and be able to whether watch the news or I'd say some sports, but there's really no sports. Maybe saw some golf yesterday. I heard there was golf on. Thank you for that. We are, all right, as I go in the dark here, we are planning and have applied for FEMA reimbursement. We haven't submitted anything for that grant as of yet. We were asked by OPM by May 1st to give them any expenditures we had made or anticipated to make by June 30th. We submitted that, as well as 139 other towns, and this was as of last Wednesday. And OPM believes with the stimulus funds that the state received, that they'll be able to cover all of the town's requested expenditures 100%. So we will first take reimbursement from those state monies at 100% before we apply anything else to FEMA, which would only be 75%. So I think that's important to note, if we can get 100% back. Since we submitted, we've had some different expenses specifically related around reopening, and a lot of those safety precautions we're taking here. So we're going to resubmit our form to OPM. Last week on our governor's call, they let us know that we go ahead and share any new expenses, and hopefully they can cover those too. So we're hoping to get 100% reimbursement right now on anything that we spend. We're going to still keep the FEMA application open because the pandemic is not over, and costs may potentially escalate. With that, I want to share a little bit of data I shared with the Board of Finance last week. As of last Monday, the unemployment data showed, it's not official and it's not complete, but it was in response to towns asking for data for our towns, that Willington had approximately, it was 10.96% unemployment claims paid to date. And so that was processed claims to date. So the first round of numbers I think I spoke to you about was initial claims, and those were just claims that they had received in. Since then, they have given us a second set of indicators, which was actual process claims. They're not complete. There's certainly some potential for error in there. The towns aren't verified as they've given to us. It's just what was noted on the forms. So it's not a perfect number, but almost 11% is what it looked like as of May 11th data. And there was some incomplete data in there. So I'll keep you posted as those numbers become a little bit more stagnant, and I'll see, you know, be curious to see if they change. We won't know for a while if they change for this coming week when some of these businesses open in a more broad range. So that could be a factor. Let's talk about face coverings. I don't suppose any of you love wearing a mask. I know we don't, and I've mentioned we're wearing them here in the town office building, unless you're in an office by yourself, or there's a wall between you and someone else. When we leave our offices to go to the copier, to use a restroom, to get our lunch, to walk outside, we all put face masks on. We've asked the same of our residents, and specifically at the transfer station. And Troy could attest to this. A typical Monday morning around here is hearing from residents who are upset, not just with some staffing issues and wearing masks, and Troy and I are continuously working on that, but also our fellow residents not wearing masks at the transfer station. So, you know, I urge everyone who can that the guidance from the executive order was to wear a face covering when you can't keep a 6-foot social distance. And for those of you, if you've been to the transfer station, 6 cars lined up, all dumping your garbage in the same place and crossing each other, it's almost impossible to keep a 6-foot distance, and people are concerned and people are aware. So I urge you all to follow those guidelines, and to continue to wear a face covering the nose and mouth when you're at the transfer station. So if you have any suggestions on other ways, we put some signage up there. We sent out a public notice. I'll continue to ask people when they're at the transfer station to wear a face mask. I'd ask that only one person exit your vehicle to dump into the different bins and try to limit the number of people. But if we had to put something stricter in place, I think it would be very difficult to police, certainly not with the 2-person staff we have. And would that mean only letting a couple of cars up at a time? If you've been there on a Saturday or Sunday, you know how busy it is. That would be problematic when people are waiting at the end of Hancock Road to dump their 3 bags of garbage. So, and certainly Troy and I would be open to any suggestions either of you have, but we'll just ask people to wear their face masks when they are in public. Any questions about COVID or our plans currently? Okay, all is quiet. I am going to jump back to Liza. I'm sorry, Liza, were you raising your hand? Okay. I am going to jump back to our appointment of the Board of Education matter. I see our town attorney is now on the call. Ryan, I don't know if you can unmute yourself. So yep. Ryan, I'll give you a little bit of background on why we asked your opinion. So thanks for offering to come back. Our Board of Education, after a month, has not filled the vacancy that they have. They were at a split vote after a couple of votes, and so that vote that has moved per the Board of Education policy, after 30 days, moved to the Board of Selectmen. Okay. This has become a contentious issue with many in our town. It's become a hot button political issue. And the Board of Selectmen, the question raised was, can we kick this back to the Board of Ed? Or is it now, their policy says if the board is unable to fill the vacancy within 30 days after it occurs, the Board of Selectmen may appoint a qualified person to fill the vacancy until the next town election.
Well, Eric, I know that you've gotten quite the crash course in language. We have the word may here. Mm-hmm. So that does not direct the board to absolutely do it. It is within your purview, but if the language is may, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if the language is may, then that is not a mandate. It is simply the option and the right to do so, sort of the right of first refusal. If you choose not to, then it would linger, and I would assume by default would be back in the Boards of Ed's lap, because if you're not going to do it, they're the only ones left to do it. So you're certainly, if it's may, you're certainly not under a requirement to do it. It's your prerogative whether you do it or not.
Okay. And I suppose my follow-up question would go to the Board of Ed and or their council, is because their policy says after 30 days it goes somewhere else, how long do they continue in this loop? They either find a way or ask us to do it again, and we could be in a virtual deadlock
Good.
of sorts, because I don't see a statute that says that the Board of Selectmen shall at this point, and that's what the selectmen are saying. Are we obligated to? And I apologize if I look like I'm not paying attention. On the other screen, I have a Board of Education policy statute on filling a vacancy. Unless otherwise provided by charter or special act, such vacancies shall be filled by the remaining members of the board. But then they have a policy that speaks to beyond that, correct?
I mean,
but their policy does say may, which is
right. It's certainly the Board's obligation, the Board of Ed's obligation to do this. If they're not going to do it, then again, the Board of Selectmen may intervene, but they do not have to intervene.
Okay.
So I would suggest at this point, if I may, that to push it back to the Board of Education. If the Board of Education becomes hopelessly deadlocked further and needs to have intervention again, that they do so with there being much more conversation, much more information coming to us, and so that this is not something that is happening sort of on the fly for the Board of Selectmen, and that it can be a much more intentional process rather than getting a couple of names in an email. There being an opportunity for some organized conversation with the Board of Selectmen and the applicants, or the possible candidates. But that I really feel like the Board of Education needs to, for everybody, and I'm not just the Democratic side or the Republican side of the room. Everybody needs to come to a point where this board can negotiate with each other and make decisions with each other, and not repeatedly go down this path of having the Board of Selectmen have to make the call for the decisions that are on their table.
When we started this conversation, I did say I'd hope to hear from both candidates. I would like to, and I know that they are both, I heard someone say that Brenda, and I heard Brenda say she was on the line, and Laura Rodriguez is now as well as arrived. We may still make that decision, Liza, but I think I would like to hear from, because at the Board of Education side, I didn't hear from either candidate. So even if we were being asked to make a decision, all I have is a letter written by two town committees, and then one by Ms. Rodriguez. So if you would both entertain, I would like to hear from Ms. Abrams and Ms. Rodriguez on why they would like to be. And I think if we kick this back to the Board of Education, I think it would be important for those members who are on this call too to hear what these candidates have to say. And I think it might go a long way in the decision making at their end. So Brenda, if you can unmute yourself, we'll give you an opportunity to speak to anything you'd like to share with us about the position that that we're currently being asked to fill. Brenda's still on the call? Okay, I'll come back in the event she is. Laura, if you would like to unmute yourself and share with us.
Found it.
There you go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I didn't come into the meeting earlier. I'm actually on a Willington Scholarship Foundation meeting at the moment. I'm vice chair of that committee. I have been a resident and a taxpayer here in Willington for 18 years. Many of you may know me as the teacher at Hall Memorial. I taught 7th and 8th grade science for 12 years. My youngest, Gabe, went through the Willington schools from 2nd grade when we moved here all the way through E.O. Smith. So I am very invested in this community, in this town. When I was a teacher here, of course, I could not serve on the Board of Ed, but I did start in 2008 with the Scholarship Foundation. I have since I entered a doctoral program at the University of Connecticut, and I just finished up my first year teaching at Eastern Connecticut State University. I actually just submitted my dissertation to my committee, and I will be defending it 2 weeks from yesterday, May 29th. So I am right now an education professor at Eastern. My concentration, my expertise is in science education, but I am teaching pre-service teachers in all different fields. So education is my life's passion, my life's work. When this opportunity came up, for me, it was perfect timing, because for the past 3.5 years, I have been working in the doctoral program, and I've been very, very busy. But now I am finishing it and my workload goes back to normal, and it's something I feel that I can really take on and devote my energies to working for the children of Willington once again. So I'm not, I think that's, I know I wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen, so there were other qualifications in there also.
You did, and we received that. And I believe both selectmen received the letter. Is that correct, Liza and John? I can't see you anymore. Okay.
Can I just say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Because one other thing, I was looking through the bylaws of the Board of Education at the responsibilities and duties of Board of Education members, and there were 2 points that really jumped out at me. So number 5 and 6 of the bylaws, I think that in this highly politicized world that we live in today, and the deadlock that the Board of Ed is encountering, I think that these 2 bylaws are really, really important to restate and to think about in this decision and in the work of the Board of Education going forward. So number 5 states that one of the responsibilities and duties of a Board of Education member is to work harmoniously with other board members without trying to either dominate or neglect one's share of the work, and to respect the opinions of the other board members. I think it's just critical that we remember that the Board of Education's job is for the children of Willington, that we want them to get the best possible education. And then the second one, number 6, is to vote and act impartially in board meetings for the good of the school district, and to abide by the majority vote in all cases, and to support the resulting decision. So I just feel that we really need to make a concerted effort to put politics aside and to work together and to think, what are the best solutions for our school system and for our community, our taxpayers, so that our children get the best education for the money that we spend for them. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts. I see Brenda now. Brenda, you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to share anything with us about the position we are being asked to fill. Mike, can Brenda unmute herself? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, she's in there.
Brenda,
Can you hear me?
we can.
Okay, great. So really what I want to say is that, especially in this time, of the COVID and all of this, I really think that we need to come together as a united front. I think it's really important for us to do that, to allow our community to be stronger. I was also a teacher at MCC for quite a few years as an adjunct teacher. So I am really concerned about the students and their future. And I think it's really important. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to be real, okay? For me, it doesn't really matter if you're Republican or Democrat. The real purpose is for the children and the student success. And I just feel like we need to come together, especially at this time, coming together as a united front to, make the community of Willington stronger and our student success stronger. And I am willing to work as a united front with all of the board members to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate both of you taking the opportunity to talk to us. I think it's important to hear from the parties that are we're being asked to appoint potentially, and it's something that I didn't hear. This is the first time I've heard from them. I didn't hear from them at the Board of Education meetings for various reasons that didn't happen. they had their own set of circumstances over there, and I won't speak to why anyone did or did not. But I know for me, if I was being asked to make a decision, it was important that I heard from the people that were looking to appoint, why they wanted to be on that board. And I heard, quite frankly, from 2 qualified individuals. And as the chairman said at their meeting last week, any of the individuals appointed, he thought were highly qualified and could do the job. And I think we heard that. So we can do one of 2 things. We can move forward with an appointment from us, or we can move to send this back one more time and give the Board of Education another opportunity to have a discussion about maybe the candidates as opposed to the process, or it being a political situation, because quite frankly, nobody wins in this, and certainly the only loser in this situation are the students and staff of our schools. They're losing in the process of what now has become a political issue by many. So those are our choices. Those are my thoughts. I've heard enough of my own voice. John?
I think we should kick it back to the Board of Education for a further 30 days. And just thought off the top of my head, if they cannot settle it at that time, could we move it on to a town meeting to make the decision? Because
Not currently. There's no mechanism in place for us to hold a town meeting for this particular reason. That there are certain reasons, and I would not call this an emergency financial reason, unfortunately. So I think, quite frankly, either that board needs to do it, or as their policy, it moves it to this board. And it is one of the things that this board does is fill such vacancies. I don't think it would be inappropriate of either board, but I think the 3 of us seem to be a little bit in agreement, which is refreshing. That I'd like to give them one more opportunity. If we could give them another month to have real conversation amongst themselves, and in each one of them to hear the others, and take the politics out of it, take the Republican and Democrat out of it, and remember why each of them wanted to be on the Board of Education, and what we just heard from these 2 individuals who are asking to serve on the Board of Education. I think that's important. And I think that's what should go.
I would make that we return the issue to the Board of Education for a further 30 days.
I'll second.
Second motion by John, seconded by Liza. Is there any further discussion? I just want to say I appreciate all those who voiced their opinion. We certainly don't all agree, but I appreciate John and Liza, the 3 of us could have a good conversation about this process with each other, and understand that we're looking to make the best decision for the town. And I think if everyone can take a step back and remember why each of us is in the position we're in, and use that going forward, and not for individual reason, then maybe that will help them make some decisions over there, I hope. Otherwise, we're going to have to do the tough work, and in 30 days, we'll go ahead and make that decision. So with that, any other discussion? Liza, anything? No.
Nope, I believe what needs to be said has been said.
Okay. I thank you. Ms. Campbell, we're ready for you.
All right. Selectman Boritz.
Aye.
Selectman Buffington.
Aye.
First Selectwoman Washinsky.
Aye. All right, the decision is unanimous. Although I see many members here, and the superintendent will send a communication to the Board of Education chair, and hopefully we see them back in 30 days with a 7th member. Otherwise, we'll be prepared to do so. So thank you all for the conversation. Mr. O'Donnell, I appreciate you jumping back on with us in this late evening. And we will now move on to the additional item of old business, which is our CIP plan. Okay, CIP. it's a big plan. It's a 5-year plan. The years 2 through 4 did not finalize before COVID. And the plan itself is to be voted on by the legislative body. That's the CIP plan. Items in year 1 of that plan are part of the budget, and the dollars in that plan were already voted on by the selectmen. They ultimately voted on by the selectmen. We made changes. We sent it on to the Board of Finance. If you were at the Board of Finance for all 5+ hours on Thursday night, there was a lot of discussion around capital. I hear that. I think it's important that we take another look. So I've once again taken another look at the CIP plan, and I have yet another offer to you. And again, we're only looking at year 1. Everything we do is going to throw the rest of the plan into limbo, but that entire plan is voted on at a town meeting. It's not the dollars for year 1 are actual budgeted dollars for the next fiscal year, and they're included in our budget. So that's where they're approved. The plan itself is approved by a town meeting. I still have not gotten any clarification as to how we could hold a town meeting to approve the out years. But because of this emergency and the lack of information about what next year will bring, the state says we'll get every dollar we've been told when received this year. All of that revenue we should anticipate. What they can't do is tell us what next year will bring. And so with that, I suggest the following changes. Mike, may I share the screen? I'm going to put this up so everyone can kind of follow me here. And I am going to share this screen. Okay, so Donna was kind enough to put this back into a spreadsheet for us. So what I am proposing from the selectmen is to I've removed all of the projects with the exception of the, well, let me highlight the boiler valves and pumps here for $8,765 at Hall School. They, if you recall, put in a new boiler. So this would put new equipment with the new boiler as opposed to old with new. Mr. Stevens, is that correct? That's your project. I want to make sure I speak to it properly. And I am proposing we leave in the $10,000 for the new boiler here at the town office building. I suggest removing the following items that were still in there. The exterior trim doors and pillars for Hall School, and that I made that cut after speaking with the superintendent. The money for the consultants for the school building committee. The school building committee can still be formed and meet. They would have to go through a process if there were any funds needed, but we would not allocate a project for funds in this current fiscal year. I also removed the Old Town Hall septic fund for $45,000. Again, these are proposed changes. The replacement of the Public Works Director vehicle, we'll push that out as well as the drainage on Schofield Road and the, Village Hill Road and the Liska Road culverts engineering project. And I also removed the pickleball court. The only items remaining on this plan besides the two mentioned, one at Hall School and the boiler here at the TOB, was the CPR device on the ambulance, bunker gear that was requested. And again, these were safety items, and replacing the oil tank at Station 13 that needs to be replaced due to age. And they're actually replacing that with propane heat instead of oil heat. So my proposal is to remove all named planned with the exception of those that were for safety and the boiler items that needed to be changed, those that affected current heating. And the dollars that would be transferred to the capital reserve. So we would still be putting money into capital in the event we had emergencies that needed to be addressed. we could come back to the town and ask for those monies through town meeting, through Board of Finance appropriation, and through town meeting would be $180,356. So we would appropriate funds, but no money could be spent without going to a town meeting for additional resources. That is my proposal that we share with Board of Finance. After 5 hours, I heard their concerns. You know, I think when we all have time to think about it, and the more uncertain these times get, I think this is the best way to do it. We spend a lot of time with a lot of people at CIP. This is not a typical process, and I wanted to be thoughtful about what we do. So I'm asking you to consider this proposal, moving on it and sending it to the Board of Finance before their meeting on Thursday. Questions? Liza or John? Liza?
So I know an email came in not long enough before from the Board of Finance with some questions regarding the capital improvement plan.
Okay.
It was not long enough before the meeting for me to really read and digest everything, because there's probably 20 different questions asked.
Okay.
But the capital improvement plan was amongst those. I think, and the one question that I wanted to, so when we're saying in this year one that we're pushing something out of year one.
Right. The rest of the plan, in all honesty, needs to be reworked, because everything we take off of year one changes the rest of the plan. It changes everything. But without knowing what funds we're going to have from the state, what situation we're going to be in it as a town, I think there's two things. One, a need to put things on hold that we don't believe are emergent, and two, to look at the rest of the plan. So I would recommend that our CIP plan try to get back together. It won't be easy in this forum, but that we, try to look at the out years and try to put, again, it's just a plan, right? It's a working document. The actual dollars are only spent in 1 year of the plan, and that's within this year. And so the rest of the plan is going to need some real work. I think there's no way around the fact that things are being put on hold because we just don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening at the state. There's a lot of uncertainty. We look at our residents now and their financial situation. Will that change when things begin to open? We just don't know. We don't know how long. Will they open and close again? Will people be off unemployment and then back on again? And, after really, this is what keeps me up at night, worrying about these things. And I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's, funding those things that right now we know need to be done. And, if a vehicle breaks and it needs to be replaced, I think we look at that point. But right now our vehicles are holding on. And while I still believe we need them, they're functioning currently. And I think it's the right thing to do for the town. There is a mechanism in place to come back to townspeople through a town meeting. And then I hope we could actually have that process where the rest of the town can be part of the process.
So I have a follow-up question. So everything that was pushed out or cut, so I know you mentioned that you talked to Phil and made sure that like the pillars, like that the school's not going to fall down, right?
Right.
The facade isn't going to fall down or whatever. So had you had conversations with all of the departments?
I did
for
not.
elements? Okay.
I did not. I know that the front pillars, I was concerned with, making sure it wasn't just about paint and trim, and that it was, I wanted to make sure that the school wasn't we weren't going to have serious issues with the front, because that was a project that was originally in a 2017-2018 budget. And when there was a more pressing need, the then acting superintendent put this project off, reallocated the funds, and then put it back in CIP. So it's been around for a while. And so that's probably the only one that concerned me, making sure it wasn't emergent. But I did not, I did not speak to every department. But after sitting at CIP meetings and hearing some of the things, I know there was a an ask for Willington Hill for their response vehicle. The vehicle needs some repairs. I don't believe they've put in a lot of money in repairs and then that it's still functioning, as is our public works truck. You know, it's been in the shop multiple times this year. We spent quite a bit of money on repairs on it, but it's currently still working. And so I would say, let's put that off. If it becomes, you know, an issue and something happens to that vehicle or another, we're going to have to address it. But, you know, I heard the concerns. We talked about some of them here. We've talked about the money for the school building committee consultants. I think putting the projects aside that aren't for things that absolutely have to get done right now, we could put aside. You know, we could ask of the Willington one if the bunker gear, and I believe they have some in their regular budget. If that was something that could be put on hold, would we do that? I know there's a cycle of using those funds. There's also, those items come out of Fund 17, and there's certainly some concern about the revenue in there being as sustainable as it was, simply because there aren't as many transport calls. People aren't going to the hospital. So when our ambulance isn't transporting people, there's not as much revenue coming in. And that's a concern I heard Chief Moore speak to at the Board of Finance meeting on Thursday evening. So I know that vehicle would have come out of Fund 17, and there would be concern there.
So then, because I didn't do the math at all on this,
Sure.
So are we putting about a comparable amount into the capital reserve for what we're pushing out, so that like if one of the trucks did break, or if the pillar on the front of the school did crack, that we then had sort of like this pool of money within the capital reserve for those departments to go to?
So
is that
right
what we're,
here,
is that what we're doing?
yep, what we were putting was 165.11 into the capital reserve, and now the proposal will be putting 183.56. So what it does is remove any projects. There's no the money is, we put money into capital so that if we needed to, let's say Troy's truck or Willington Hill's truck needed to be replaced in a situation similar to how we went back and asked for a plow truck this year, we would go through that process through the Board of Finance, through the Board of Selectmen, onto a town meeting before it could be spent, and there are capital dollars there in the event we needed to spend funds out of the capital reserve. So we're funding capital, but no particular project. So there isn't a school building committee that's going to come specifically looking for their $100,000 earmark dollars. You know, there's no, if something happened to the septic at the old town hall, we would need to address it. But it's not as though on July 1, we'd start planning to replace it and go through the process, because there was $45,000 set aside for it. And for this fiscal year, I would say, unless something had to be done, we really just need to kind of hold everything together. But I would still suggest that the CIP committee come back to the table and really take a strong look at years 2 through 5 and see what that looks like. So some of those bigger items that we were already struggling with debating, you know, could fall off the plan for a year just because it wouldn't be possible. But I think I think we hear the concerns of, you know, certainly John spoke to several items at our last meeting. I heard him. We heard that, you know, listening to the Board of Finance and getting, you know, more information as this is an ever evolving situation. I think it's the best thing to do for our town at this point with the uncertainty. So.
Sorry, one more follow-up question to all that. So given that we can't hold town meetings right now, is there a mechanism that we can use if one of those, hopefully it doesn't, hopefully everything holds up and we don't need to worry about it, but will there actually be a mechanism that we can use should one of these things that we've cut or put on pause need to come to fruition?
There is, there's an executive order surrounding financial items that would have gone to a town meeting, if that is your legislative body, and there's a process in which to handle that currently. So the answer is yes. There isn't, if we wanted to put a pickleball court in, that is not a process which we could handle, because it's not an emergent financial issue or would cause a hardship on the town. So yes, for those emergent situations and spending, there is a process in place.
Okay,
That
so this,
exhausts my questions.
Executive order, John?
okay, so this looks very reasonable to me, so you want to bring this to the Board of Finance next week?
Yes, I would this week. So if you will entertain a motion, I'd like to move this current CIP plan that you see before you, and we'll give detail. That's $180,000, $356 in the capital reserve that funds. I apologize as I continue to scroll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects, as well as you can see these items here through line 15 are expenses that are already committed expenses. So I move to approve the plan as presented.
I'll second.
Robin, you can pick who seconded that. All right.
I'm
Any further
wrestling for it,
discussion? We'll give it to John. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see you all. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. I haven't taken a look at, you could probably see me scrolling through my email quickly. I was trying to look for that email from the Board of Finance. I didn't see it before this meeting started, so I'll take a look. If this addresses some of those questions, we'll answer them, and I'll look at all the others to forward on to them before Thursday. So with no further discussion, we'll vote on this item. John or Liza? Going once, going twice? Okay, go ahead, Robin.
Selectwoman Boritz,
Aye.
Selectman Blessington,
Aye.
First Selectwoman Waschinsky,
Aye. Right, motion carries. I thank you both for taking another look at that with me. We have present to speak, so for those who hung in with us or thought this might be a quick meeting, if you're present to speak and you're on video, if you raise your hand and recognize you, I just ask that you state your name for the record. Is there anyone present to speak? Scrolling.
Yeah, Erica, Jim Bulick here. I'll make a couple comments. I just want to point out the Board of Finance has an even-membered board, and it is totally possible to run a board with an even number of members. The only thing is, at that point, your strategy is different. You have to compromise. So it's entirely an option before the selectmen that you could choose to appoint nobody and just force the board to compromise and move on.
Thank you. Anyone else present to speak?
You want me to check to see if anybody else is on the?
So quickly, we're going to unmute everyone. So if you don't want us to hear you, and if you wanted to speak, I just ask you identify yourself for the record.
I see. Before we do that,
Matt, go ahead.
Clark has his hand up.
Yeah, this is Matt Clark, 42 Burt Latham Road. So overall, I thought this meeting went very well. The Board of Education issue is contentious and political, and there's strife. It's not fun. I would say that the town of Willington should consider passing whatever the lawyers say we should pass to avoid this kind of thing in the future. I was asked by Christina Christina Miles, how come I didn't show up to board meetings and other functions? Why are you the new guy, Matt? And 2 years ago, when I first started here at Willington, 3 years ago, we had a situation where on the Board of Education where the same thing happened, and the Republican had to resign, and that person, the Republicans put up a candidate, the Democrats put up a candidate, and they sat a Democrat instead of a Republican in to replace that person. I don't think there's need to have this go on and on and on and on. So I would say that my suggestion would be that the Board of Selectmen consider passing a policy on this, you know, and that would sort of tell the different boards in town, hey, listen, this is what we really like to see you guys be doing in the future. And then we wouldn't have these things happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, that would actually have to be a town-wide policy, and it would go to a town meeting. It would not be a policy of the Board of Selectmen. That would take a whole town input. So, and I think it's something we will look into. Anyone else present to speak?
All right, I'm going to hit the unmute button.
Okay, now you're all unmuted, so don't say anything you don't want us to hear. Okay, anyone present to speak, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, hold your peace.
Yeah, Elaine?
Yes, Elaine? Just identify
I just
yourself for
want
the
to
record.
correct.
Identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, Elaine Newcomb, 28 Bermuda Road. I just want to correct the facts, because at the first Board of Education meeting, there were 3 candidates. Brenda Abrams, Peter Latintich, and myself, and we each submitted a letter to the board. Lori Rodriguez was not a candidate at that time. There was a deadlock at the second vote that was taken by the Board of Education. 2 new candidates were added, George Debsky and Lori Rodriguez. And there were letters given to the Board of Education for all of the candidates from the initial submission, the first vote, but apparently the Board of Selectmen didn't see any of that paperwork. So I feel that the Board of Selectmen was not given the full information as you came into this meeting as to the actual sequence of events and the history, because Lori Rodriguez was not in the initial pool, and yet she was the only one who had information at tonight's meeting. So I just see that as a process issue. Thank you.
I will say, Ms. Newcomb, thank you. The letter was sent by Ms. Rodriguez herself to us, not from the Board of Education. None of the documents we received were from the Board of Education. Yes, Ms. Cunningham. Oh, we can't hear you again. Poor Michelle.
Michelle, interpretive dance.
Okay, I feel bad. There's Michelle. So listen, again, if you want to try to call in, I'm going to get to good and welfare unless anyone is present to speak, and you have time to come back and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. Or you can type it into the comments and we can share it there. Yes, Ms. Smith, you can unmute yourself.
If people are having trouble,
identify yourself for the record.
I'm Sarah Smith. Thank you. I live on Eldridge Road. If people, for mechanics are not working so they can be heard, couldn't they write it in where we chat?
Absolutely.
And have a comment?
You can type into the chat, or I will offer that you could email your comments to the selectmen and we will make them part of the record. It's another downfall of this virtual world, which sometimes is nice because you all can stay at home while we have a meeting and then turn around and be home when we're done, but we can't always hear people. So is there anyone else present to speak? I thank you all for showing up and for sharing your thoughts with us. I'll move on to good and welfare. I have a couple of things. If you've driven between the senior center, Senior Way, and the cemetery since last Thursday, you'll see a beautiful flag display put up by our flag committee. So I want to thank Phil Monty and his committee. I believe it's Joe Chicky and Joe Rondo are the other members of that committee. I saw Rich Mindek of our EDC out there putting flags up with them on Thursday. So I want to thank them. It looks absolutely beautiful, and it's a little something positive in this COVID time. So due to the generosity of numerous residents, they were able to purchase and replace flags and poles and put up more flags. The flags stopped previously at the town green, and now they go all the way to the cemetery. So it's one more reason I'm disappointed that we're not having our typical Memorial Day event. They'll be up until, they'll leave them up till just after the 4th of July, take them down and put them back up before Veterans Day. So take a drive by on a beautiful sunny day as they're in the breeze. It looks beautiful. So thanks for lightening up my drive to work every morning. Memorial Day update. As I mentioned, we're not having our typical gathering on the green and parade down to the cemetery with a ceremony. Instead, some VFW members, along with our own Robin Campbell, are going to record the ceremony that we typically do at the cemetery. So it's a small group. So we meet the under 5 social gathering, and we're going to record that. We're going to record that. We're going to share that out with everyone on our website and our social media for Memorial Day, so that we still can honor the fallen on Memorial Day, and that was important to us. We had many suggestions of things we can do, and we wanted to make sure we kept separate how we celebrate Memorial Day and how we celebrate Veterans Day. So thank you to the VFW members who helped guide in this, and to Robin for making it happen. So look for that on Monday, and take some time to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. This Friday, we will be having a food drive here at the town office building. There'll be a fill a public works truck. You can leave food and healthcare, beauty care items to help restock our food pantry. It's in need of restocking, and we typically have a food drive this time of year. We've given out more food than we would normal, and it really needs to be restocked. So between 8 and 2 here at the town office building, if you can and you're able to give, please do. That's between the Human Services Department. And then next Friday, May 29th, will be our second food distribution, where we'll have food, masks, those healthcare items, beauty care items between 10 and 12. So look for some more information on that to go out. Well, clearly I haven't moved in a while. Okay, it's a little dark in here. All right, that's all I have for good and welfare. I want to thank, I guess I have one more. And as we go through this, Mike D'Amato and CHA are helping us to moderate these meetings, which help everybody to be able to get in and be seen, so we don't have to be watching all of you. So I appreciate your help, Mike. John or Liza, do you have anything else for good and welfare? Okay. With that, I am going to, I move that we enter into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter and invite the town clerk. Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Liza? Aye. Aye. All right. So we'll give you a moment. Mike's probably going to kick you all off and then lock the meeting. So have a good night. I thank you.
Yep. Oh. So is everybody that needs to be in executive session already here if I lock it?
Yes, everybody who's here, yes. So we have a few people who need to still leave.
Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna lock it so people can't get back in.
Someone else can get in.
And then I'll go once we know everybody else is gone. Okay, let's see.
Can you pause the recording, Mike?
Yep.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it's 9:12 and we've exited executive session. And seeing now, John's already, see, you all want to go. Again, I want to thank you both for an incredibly productive meeting. I want to say that on the record. I appreciate the way we were able to hear each other, listen to each other, and listen to the people who spoke tonight. So thank you both very much. I appreciate it. I hope you stay well. And with that, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:12.
Second.
Second by Liza. All right. Have a good night. Go have some dinner. Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.